We're going to talk about raising major gifts in time of uncertainty. But we're first going to start by just introducing ourselves. So my name is Breeana Gumpert. I am the development director at Colorado West Land Trust. We thought we would chat about what got us into fundraising, because major gifts, asking for gifts, it's a skill that I think everyone has, and you just find different ways to bring it out in yourself. So I am a Southern California native. I started fundraising in my senior year of college. I was doing a co-op for 6 months with the Home Base Foundation in Boston. They were a nonprofit in partnership with the Red Sox, the Boston Red Sox. And so I got into fundraising back then and learned that fundraising wasn't just asking for money. It was so much more, and that just brought out so many different things that I was like, oh, I love this, I can do this, and I've been doing it since. I started working at the Land Trust as a development director just about 2 years ago in August. Before that, I was at a pediatric cancer nonprofit, and then before that, I was at an independent school. So a lot of different causes, but fundraising is applicable in all of those. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I'll just move over here to be near the mic. Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces from the last session. So I started fundraising straight out of college. It was the surprise of my life that, armed with a script and a cause that I cared about, I could walk right up to a stranger at a door and pitch them on making a gift. Walk away with a gift, some of the time. I was definitely still learning. So this was door-to-door canvassing. Has anyone ever done that before? Yes. Pretty scary. Yeah, so in my experience, there were butterflies, there was adrenaline. It felt hard in a way that made me want to keep practicing, made me want to get better. And I thought I would finally get to a place where fundraising from individuals felt easy. I was like, one day I'll reach that level. What kept me going, through the door-to-door canvassing in subsequent years was I loved connecting with people at a heart level about the things they cared about. So 20 years later, I'm still working with organizations. I'm still driven to help them connect with their donors, because I feel like building relationships with your donors is the most important thing you can do, especially in times like these that we're going through. And I know it's not easy. I have never reached the level where it feels easy, but I do love the challenge. It's, important work, and I love building the connection. So our goal for today is to share advice for connecting with your donors and major donors and encouraging to make their best gift to your land trust. This advice will work in any economic, political climate we might find ourselves in, and will help you focus, especially now when times are tough. And so before we dive in, just from one fundraiser or another, I just want to say your skills are critical right now. I know we're all exhausted. I know we are often on the edge of burnout. You're needed now more than ever. And even if you feel like you're still learning, you're still very much in the beginning stages, even if it feels like every day there's another mountain to climb, things are super hard, your work matters. And I think it's so cool and inspiring that you get to talk to people to help them figure out how they want to change their corner of the world. You get to help them reach their best, most generous version of themselves. So that is kind of what's kept me going all these years, and especially now when the news is just so hard to take in every day. So I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you again all for being here. So our conversation today, I gave a little bit of an overview, but in more specifics, here's what we have going on today in our pursuit to help you connect with your major donors and raise more money. So we'll start just talking about the challenges and opportunities we're facing right now. We will then dive into skills building, and share how to build your major donor outreach work through prospect identification and qualification. We'll share tried and true cultivation strategies that work no matter what is happening with the dang tariffs. You know, like we can't control that, but we can control how we interact with donors. And we'll give you ideas for how to become better at making the ask, especially in these crazy times. We'll then break out into small groups and practice a little bit. And we have a handout with actionable steps to guide that part. And if you have to leave early, just come grab the handout too. So it's right up here. We'll time for questions at the end. Okay, your turn.
Great. So just to start, I just wanted to open it up and just ask in the room, what is the challenge that you're facing in cultivating your donors or major donors? And when I saw this initially, I was like, you know what? Actually, what is the definition of cultivating donors? Does anyone really know? Because, when we think about the donor life cycle, which we'll go through, there's stewarding donors, cultivating donors, and those two can kind of be interchangeable. So I'm curious if you guys even know what cultivating donors really is. Anyone?
I'd say it's building relationships and growing them to come to a place where they result in philanthropy.
Yeah. So exactly. It's really to engage and foster a sense of connection and build trust with donors. So it's a step which we'll go through in the cycle that is before the solicitation. So what challenges are we facing as land trusts?
I feel like I have some donors, I have in my donor portfolio, some donors that have given to the land trust for years, but I think might have more potential. So not necessarily cultivating them, but it's a new relationship for me. And I will send them emails and I'll invite them to events, and I just never hear back from them. So I'm not sure if that's like an issue of the right style of communication or just touching on their specific interests, but just getting trying to reach out to people who have potentially major donors and just never getting back to the challenge. Who are already, that's very specific, they're already giving to the land trust.
We will touch on that today. Yep.
So I live and work in San Luis Valley, and we're really trying to cultivate relationships with donors that don't live in the valley because it's such a low income area, or maybe second homeowners in South Worthing Creek. And at the end of the day, I am a one-person development team. I do communications, fundraising, events, outreach, everything. And so trying to find the time and funds sometimes to connect with donors on the front page. And cultivate those relationships, especially in person, is a huge challenge for me.
Great. We will talk about how to identify and to prioritize. So that's great that that's an issue that you need. Anyone else? Yeah.
When we see donors dropping off or dropping back,
Okay. And then if you didn't want to answer that question, I'd love to know why you are deciding to sit in this room today then. Yeah.
I work for the Essex Valley Land Trust, and we're a member-based organization. We have created relationships over the last 30 years. We have fantastic donors that give on an annual basis, and I think we're delivering on their expectations, but we're thinking about exploring some new opportunities. We're thinking about some new conservation projects, and that's going to require some additional fundraising. So this idea of a capital campaign is something we're flirting with. And so that's going to be a game changer for me. That's something we haven't done before. That's fine for days to not have one of those off successfully.
Awesome. So actually, I was going to share an example. And so at Colorado West Land Trust, we're based out of Grand Junction, but we service the western slope. So we go all the way down to Gunnison, Montrose, Delta, Uray, over to, we're in Hotchkiss, Paonia. Where else are we in? We're in, is that 6 of them? San Miguel County, thank you. That's 6 fun. So we service all that area. And when I joined the Land Trust, we actually started we were in the middle of a campaign. It was a 1.8 general operating campaign. It was called the 40 Forever. And we finished that up in December of last year. And so I was going to share with you guys that one of the challenges for our land trust is, okay, we finished this campaign. We've identified individuals who can give at a higher capacity than we ever thought. Let's build a major donor program. But where do I start? Right? We've identified, but now what do we do? And so that's the challenge where we're at is, okay, we've identified the individuals. Now let's build out this program. And what does that entail? So that's kind of what we're going to walk through and talk through today. So great. But let's just chat real quick about, the challenges in our society right now. We all know that there are them. And so we just want to just point those out. And Beka did a really good job bringing out some stats. Okay, so I'm just going to read these. During the Great Recession, donations dropped by 7% in 2008 and just over 6% in 2009. We also found out that the effect isn't always immediate. The fallout from an economic downturn can take a few years to run its course of affecting donations to nonprofits. The potential long-term impact is why it's so critical to move deliberately rather than panic about your approach to donor stewardship during a recession. So we know right now there's a lot of uncertainty going on. We don't know what grants look like, what's frozen, what's not. We don't know what the stock market looks like. And I'm sure there's a lot of donors, or a lot of you who have donors who give from stocks, their IRAs. When are they wanting to take out? All of these issues are arising right now. So one thing I wanted to point out and ask you guys is what motivates your donors? Do you ever think about that? And what drives them to give? So I have 7 that I think about when I think about this question and I'm talking to a donor. So what motivates donors that I've worked with is their belief in the mission. That's number 1. That's not going to change. No matter what uncertainty is going on, their belief in the mission isn't going to change. So remember to always focus on the mission. Personal connection. People give to people, right? So no matter what's going on in the world, they're still going to give to people. So that personal connection is really important. Maybe investing, right? Maybe that's something that drives them. Recognition and legacy could be one. Community belonging, religion, morality, and then the last one, which I think is maybe on top of a lot of people's list, but the tax benefit, the financial benefit from it. Right. So here's what I was chatting about with the donor cultivation cycle. Give me a second to get to this note here. Okay. So raise your hand if you're familiar with this. Have you guys seen this before? Okay. So there's 4 steps to the cycle of major donors, right? It's identifying and qualifying. It's cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. One thing I like to remember is your donor journey should be dynamic and evolving, right? Always changing. So we're going to go through this and break this down a little bit. But this is something I would jot down on your notes if you don't have it, so that we can. And then the one thing I wanted to point out was we talked about cultivation, and cultivation is before the ask. Stewardship is after the ask, right? It's the process of building and nurturing the relationship with donors after they make a gift. I think that's super important to remember. So we're cultivating, we're trying to figure out what is it that motivates them, what do they care about our mission. Then that's how we strategically, give them a solicitation, and then the stewardship after is continuing to build that relationship, and it goes back into the cultivation, and then soliciting them, and then stewardship. So that's kind of that process. And then I wanted to just give you a couple notes on stewardship ideas, which most of you guys probably already use, but ones that I've found successful are handwritten thank you notes, videos from program staff is always a good one. B-Day acknowledgements, if you know their birthday, and then insider updates, really making those donors feel special.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So how do you determine who a major donor is? That is my question for you. Let's see, who has a major donor program here? Does anyone?
Not a formal one, but we're in helped our understanding who our major prospects
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. That's how we started too. So, yep.
We worked with a consultant who helped us to identify and curate a list of potential major donors.
Okay. Did they pull like a wealth screening on them? Nice. And what did you think about that? Like, what did your organization think? Can you share a little bit with the group on that?
Yeah, sure. I think so. They looked at our donor database who had given over time, people who were currently giving or who had lapsed. So they used that, and they also looked at people in our community who could be interested in our mission based on their giving elsewhere, and then they kind of built out a gift pyramid for us to follow and try to bring in and highlight who had given before and how to cultivate or steward those donors, and then how to bring in the new donors, and then look at our board and our existing network who had connections with those prospects if we didn't already have a relationship.
Yep. And when did you start that? I'm just curious.
We started that, I guess, in 2022. We were anticipating a capital campaign, and we were going to do a feasibility study, build out our prospect list, and then launch the capital campaign. We ended up acquiring the property in that meantime, so it was a bit of an abbreviated and condensed process. But I think we picked a consultant that we felt was really consistent with our culture, which is why I think it can feel really uncomfortable to be that. But
Right.
because of her approach and because she met us where we were and adapted to our mission and our culture and really followed our donor culture, it felt pretty good for us to kind of bring those people.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that. That's one approach and one way to start. So that's really cool. I like to think about what a major donor is and how we determine one. One is, as an organization, you have to determine what is a major gift to your organization. When I started at the Land Trust, $1,000 was what we considered a major donor. So any gift above $1,000, they were a major donor. After we did our campaign, we realized it's not $1,000 anymore. It's $10,000, right? So every organization is different, but that's something to think about when you're starting. If you just want to take a stab at it 1 year and see how it goes. Once Beka starts sharing about how we cultivate, steward, make the ask, you can start at a smaller level, and then as you work out the kinks, you build on that program, and then you start to raise it. Points I would like you guys to just jot down and think about when I think of how to determine a major donor. Focus on high capacity individual donors, right? They're driven by deep relationships, not transactions. And they require strategy, stewardship, and structure.
Okay, I'm going to give a handout. Any extras, just put in the middle of the table. We'll take this before other staffers. So, Breeana already touched on some of this, and some of you brought up these points. So I'm going to be trying not to repeat us. So to help make sure you're talking to the right people, it's super important to ID your prospects and qualify them. Most of your major donor prospects will come from your current donor base and the referrals that those donors and your board members can make for you. Far and away, your best prospects are your current donors. I think sometimes this can get away from us if we have someone on the board who's making a lot of suggestions of names to add to your list. Ground yourself in our best prospects are going to be in our current donor base. Something I find interesting is a study was done, and this is across all nonprofit sectors, but 1 in 3 major donors who are currently giving a major gift to an organization started with a gift of less than $250 to that organization. So it just gives you a sense and some reassurance that, not every major donor is going to come in hot to your organization with $1,000, $10,000 gift. Some of them are starting with fairly modest gifts for what their capacity is. Lots of people in your fundraising, base just haven't been cultivated yet because they have never really risen. They haven't gotten on your radar yet with a large gift. So it's our job to find those people who are sometimes sort of hidden. So Breeana already touched on this a little bit, but when you're putting together a prospect list, you start with those people who are already either giving at a major gift level you've identified. If you haven't identified a major gift level, start somewhere. It might be $500, it might be $5,000. Look at what those kind of top level gifts are, that top tier, where it starts, and have set that for now. So pull those people in onto your prospect list. I recommend adding in event attendees. So preferably from the last year and a half event attendees. Add in names that you, your board, staff, volunteers, others close to you have flagged as prospective major donors. Add in people who are strong connectors for your work. So, the people who are reliable at offering up good prospects. And sometimes those connectors are also donors themselves. And then I really like to keep a list that's separate from your main list. So maybe it's another tab in your spreadsheet or however you want to organize it. You could be in your database. A list of prospects who are kind of big swings, who, that's all right. These are those names that, they have big capacity, or maybe they're kind of like a local celebrity, or they're, somebody with a big name who lives in your community part-time throughout the year. And their name just keeps coming up in board meetings where members are like, we got to get money from this person. What are we doing? In your heart that it's not as easy as calling them up. You might not even be able to get access to them. Their gatekeeper might have a gatekeeper, it's very hard to get in touch with some folks who fit this profile. So that's why I like to put their name on a big swings list, because their name just needs to go somewhere. So it gets out of your head, it gets out of your ED's head, out of your board member's head, and you can be like, we've captured that, we will revisit it. But right now we're focused on these warmer prospects. And then there's ways to uncover hidden major donor prospects in your database. So one of the main, we talked about wealth screening. That can be a way to do that. Another interesting way that I recommend to groups, if you send out fundraising appeals, either email or through the mail, I like to, let's say you send out 2 a year or you send out 3 a year, at least 50% of the time in those reply devices for that appeal, put in, would you like to give $25, $50, $100, and then put 1,000. So you're making a big leap on that reply device. If somebody opts in to give $1,000 through a mailing, that's a good indicator that they have more capacity to give. And the fact that they're sort of outing themselves a bit, they may not think of it that way, but you have your laser focus, on that. So flagging them, or however you track that in your database, add those people to your prospect list too, because that's probably just the tip of the iceberg of how they could contribute. And then cold contacts. A lot of people think, major gift work, have to call all these cold contacts and have awkward conversations. And I like to keep the cold contact part as a minimal part of your major gift prospecting. First of all, it's really hard to get in touch with people or to get them to call you back. Yours are current donors, but if you add in too many of those folks to your list, you're just not going to get forward momentum. And it's going to be demoralizing for you and your team or whoever you're working with on this. So keep those cold contacts to a minimum. A cold contact is someone who truly has no direct contact either through the board or staff with your organization. They don't know who you are yet. So you have kind of an uphill battle to get on their radar, determine, you may already know they're interested in your general kind of, the mission of your land trust, but you don't know specifics. So you have a lot of work to do. LinkedIn is a great place to do a little bit of digging and see who you might have in common with a cold prospect. So that's a way to do it. But again, I wouldn't have the majority of your list be those kinds of folks. So since you can't call everyone right away on your prospect list, you need to just take the time to prioritize it before you start digging in. So this is called qualifying your donors. And you touched on like how to determine a good fit. I like to remember the ABCDs. Some people call them the ABCs. I added on the fourth letter because I'll get to it in a minute why I added on that. But so A stands for accessible. Do you already have a connection to them? Even if it's a small one, they're a neighbor of one of your board members. Okay, that's better than nothing, So B is for belief. Do they believe in or have a passion for your mission already, to your knowledge? And like Jessica said, it's demonstrated through what they give to other similar organizations. C is for capacity. Can they give in the 5, 6, or 7 figure plus range? And you'll gain this insight somewhat from wealth screening. You can also gain it from other online research, sometimes. Intel from like mutual connections you might have in common, who are like, I was at an event and they raised their card in the paddle raiser for $30,000, So that's a data point to capture. But really, most importantly, if you get a meeting with them and you start to build that relationship with them, just starting to ask questions about how they participate, how they think about, their philanthropic giving, can start to get you more of an answer about this. So, and then D is for donor-minded, which is kind of a clunky way of just saying, are they philanthropically minded? Do they give elsewhere? I think we can all think of someone in our database who fits ABC, but we don't know if they're donor-minded. We don't know if they're philanthropically minded. We haven't seen evidence that they give to other organizations. And I will say the hardest part is to turn a non-donor into a donor. It's hard for you as one organization to do that. There are a lot of people out there who have a ton of money and they just do not give philanthropically. So those two don't always, the capacity doesn't always mean there's a big open for solicitation sign on this donor. You just have to weigh all these things. I really feel like A, B, and D are better indicators of major gift prospects than C. C helps, but you can't always find a direct, number that they give. So I usually weigh A, B, and C more. So I'll just share a story here. So before I was consulting, I was at Conservation Colorado. I was the development director there. And there was a donor that made a $500 gift as their first gift, just out of the blue. And on staff, we didn't know who this person was. You immediately start just what's this person's deal? Googling them, et cetera. We had a process where once a week, we pulled donors who had given at a certain threshold into our regular kind of acknowledgement that was more than just sending a letter or an email. It was one of us would call them and try to get them on the phone and ask them what inspired their gift. And through one of those, points of outreach, we were able to start cultivating them. We did eventually find out that a board member had a connection with them. And that helped them make their first gift. It was that validation that the donor needed to make their first gift, but it wasn't the sole reason they gave. Over that year, they gave at the beginning of the year. Over that year, we cultivated them, researched them, all these things. At the end of the year, we pitched them on a $50,000 gift, which they ended up giving. And they had capacity for a lot more. I believe they're still a donor to the organization. I don't know how much they're giving now. They also joined the board not long after. And again, it wasn't just because it was like, we need rich people on our board. It was this donor had the belief and was also a great connector for the organization. So that's just a great reminder of you never know what those donors that just come across your radar are going to lead to. It's our job to be cultivating them in all ways that we can. Okay, great. We're doing good on time. Okay, so tried and true cultivation strategies. I have this on the handout as well. Now you've got your list of potential major donors and you've prioritized the list. You've qualified the list. You want to get to know them better, AKA cultivate them, so that they not only make a gift, but they continue to stay involved. So what are some ways to build that trust? First and foremost, donors who are going to invest a large for them gift in your organization want to know that they want transparent communication. They want to know that even if you're going through a shaky time, and that is very common right now with what's going on with federal grants, et cetera, they want to know that you have a plan. Even a relatively new donor, if they are at a major gifts level, I think sharing this with them can be a really powerful way to build trust. So, there's ways to do this where you're not like, the sky is falling and we might close our doors at the end of the year. If that is honestly the case, you might be having that conversation with a very small select group of donors, but you're not going to just broadcast that to your whole major gift prospect list or, even your wider list. If you have a different experience on that, I'd love to hear that. The idea of that makes me very nervous. You're going to be selective about who you're going to share this with. But for those donors that you share this with, it's, like I said, it's going to be powerful. So what are some stewardship practices that do really reassure donors as you're moving them from, let's say, maybe a modest first-time gift to, gosh, they have a lot of capacity. Gosh, they have a lot of connection to us. They believe in our cause, all these things. So these are boring but necessary. This is funny. There's so many parts of fundraising that are like that. It's like, we have our data and our database is all messed up. We got to get this. We have to get a handle on this. So prioritize cleaning your data for your major gift prospects and current donors. If they keep getting duplicate mailings from you, if they keep getting a mailing where you're getting their spouse's name wrong, their address, you keep sending it to their old address and it keeps getting forwarded to their new. These are just things where it's it just erodes their confidence just a little bit. And I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's again, it's boring but necessary. So if you have to start somewhere in your database to clean stuff up, things are kind of messed up, you have to clean, start with these folks. Use personalization in your communication where possible. So reflect back to them in your communication with these prospects what they've told you about why they give. That really important question of a first-time donor. What inspired your gift? Repeat that back to them. So you're building the case from what they already told you. What they value. And, reflecting back to them their past giving amounts. We know who you are. We value you, especially when you're pitching them on their next gift. A lot of people like to know, well, what did I do last time? And even if you're asking them for 5-10 times more than what they gave last time, people still like to know, and I will say that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to say, I can't go from 1,000 to 10,000. Are you crazy? You know, they're going to take that all into account. It's a data point. Don't make them do homework where they have to go back and look at what they gave you last time to then come to you and say, well, I spent a couple weeks searching for that information. I finally found the tax acknowledgement letter from last year. Then I had to talk to my spouse and try to cut those pieces of guesswork that they have to do down to a minimum. Share that information with them up front. And then thank yous, thanking them promptly. You know, it's an ideal scenario if you can thank them within a couple days of their gift. A personal phone call is great for that, a personal email, something that's more than just if they gave online, they're getting that form response. It's not very personal. So you can decide at what threshold do we do these personal calls. And maybe you have board members who are willing to do those calls sometimes. That's great. So then like a formal acknowledgement letter, that's your tax acknowledgement letter within a week of their gift. And those are all beautiful ways to thank them. And of course, this, you know, reporting out on impact, a lot of groups know that they have to do this, but they forget to do this. But this is a critical part of the stewardship process where you're in that space between where they gave a gift and you're working on, okay, what are we going to build up to next year when we ask them? So let's see, have great donor service. If they have a question, make it super easy for them to connect with you. Give them your number, give them your ED's number. Don't make them go to like chase around to try to find somebody in your organization who can send them their tax acknowledgement from last year. Like, don't make them go through 5 steps in a month to do that process. That again is another piece that it's often just subconscious, and most donors are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, but it's just eroding their confidence just a little bit. And for some really cranky donors, it's eroding it a lot, and you'll never recover. But it's okay. That's some people you'll never please. Yeah, you have a question?
Quick question.
Yeah.
When, you know, I think it's about $250 you have to send a letter with the date of donation, the amount, and the language of no gifts or services for an exchange of donation. If you're gonna do a handwritten note, is it possible to throw in like a little side card that has all that printed out with that information?
Yeah.
Or is that too impersonal?
No, I think it's fine. I mean, you could combine them, you could do them separately. I think it's either way is fine. As long, yeah. I mean, I think putting a little personal note on top of that letter or on a separate note card that has a beautiful picture on it, that can all be a nice touch. Yeah. Okay. Meaningful engagement opportunities. I feel like you went through some of these. Let's see. Introduce, a great idea is to introduce the new donor or the donor prospect to board members or staff members who can give them another lens on your work. It's always great to have multiple connection points between the prospective donor and your organization. Like where possible, try not to just have them have one relationship with the ED and the ED is the only person they will talk to, or one relationship with you, because when you leave, it's extra hard to transfer that relationship to another staffer or a board member. So try to always have at least 2 connection points, and that just makes the donor's experience of your organization richer. You know, they're getting to hear about your work from a different angle. Do you want to share the specific land trust donor engagement?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, can anyone?
And then you're next.
Does anyone have an example? We had someone in the last session who had a good example, but does anyone have an example of how you engage with your donors? Like a land trust example? Like what are some things that we're doing as land trusts to engage our donors, show them impact.
We have property tours.
Yep, so field club events, get them on the property, show them what's happening, what we're doing, what stewardship, what restoration work is being done. Yep. Were you gonna say that?
We do property tours as well, but sometimes we have landowners who are especially interested in engaging. And so we have an event coming up this summer where a landowner offered to host a barbecue for a few couples. And so it's just kind of a fun way for board members, for donors to get to know landowners and just kind of have a fun, unique experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we work in a really interesting and cool industry that we can get them outside. And when you look at a beautiful landscape, it's kind of hard to not have good feelings, right? So whenever you can getting them out on a property, I think is really, really impactful. So great.
Yeah.
So we've identified and qualified our donors. So now we have our little donor portfolio. We've identified our major donors. We cultivated them, right? We took these steps. We took them on a property. We personally invited them. We sent them a birthday card. Now, as an organization, we've identified, okay, we have this need for this public access project. And this specific donor we know has capacity. We've identified them. Their interest is in getting kids outdoors. So now let's make the ask, right? We've identified what the need is for the organization. We've identified that this donor is interested in it and has the potential. So now let's make this ask. This is probably the most uncomfortable, right? When we're encouraging our board to be fundraisers, we're like, you never have to ask. You just engage them and then a gift comes. But as major gift fundraisers, we have to make the ask. And so the first step is to identify any staff member who can come with you. So when I think about a public access project and we want to get kids outdoors, I'd probably take my colleague Libby with me out to this donor visit to make this solicitation because she's worked on a 15-year project that gets kids outdoors. And so who do you want to take from your organization? It really is helpful to be sitting there with another colleague while you're talking to a donor, especially if you're making a 5, 6, 7-figure ask, because one person's perspective is going to be a little bit different. Me, as the development director, I know broadly of what everyone does, but that program manager knows even more and can get really specific. So that is super important. Then when you're sitting down with the donor or you're out on a hike or you're on a property, you're asking them questions. You want that donor to be talking more than you as the organization representative, right? You want to be hearing from them, taking in all that you can as you're asking them good questions, right? Then framing the ask to address both immediate needs and long-term vision. So once you're done with the small talk, asking them questions, really making them feel comfortable, they're going to say probably, okay, why'd you bring me here today, right? And so it's, are you and your staff member on the same page of, okay, this is what we're coming here to ask. Maybe you put together a proposal for them prior to, and you basically sit it in front of them and you talk them through, I would like to ask you for 50,000 over 2 years. They're like, no, I can give you 50,000 in 1 year, right? So that's great. Yeah, what a great problem. Yeah, and then accepting non-cash gifts. Sometimes someone will be like, oh, I just don't have the cash accessible. Well, do you know what type of non-cash gifts we can take, right? Legacy gifts are one, real estate gifts. Yeah, I think stocks. Yep, thank you. Donor advised funds. Yeah, and then, sorry. Okay. When you build strong relationship with donors, they become virtually crisis proof, right? So they're gonna want to help. They're gonna say, "How can I help you? What can I do this year?" And so we are gonna go into an exercise to do that. So we would like for you to pair up with someone else. One person is the donor, the other person is the representative from the organization, and make your pitch, make your ask. Could we share from each table the experience, or if you had side conversations about something else and it diverted, that's totally fine too. We're fundraisers, that happens. If you guys want to share. Come on, guys. We talk for a living. Yes.
So what we realized right away is that we needed to do some small talk first because it was super awkward to ask when we didn't know. think about each other's projects, so we made that up and that helped. But we felt like when we could tie the money to something specific, it made it a lot easier to say yes.
Yeah.
So that was kind of something we discovered.
Yeah.
So this was a good exercise for me because I want to have this conversation, and the role playing we did was that there was a specific landowner or specific donor that I am almost ready to have this conversation with. So it was a pretty realistic conversation, and it was at a point in time where we had talked about this project. So it was a specific project that they know a ton about. It's been in the works for many, many years. And they've been kept up to date over and over and over again, and now's the time to seal the deal kind of thing. So we had a really targeted conversation, and based upon what I learned earlier in the day, so I didn't make a specific ask. I talked about the total amount I have to raise, and I let her tell me if she wants to participate and at what level. So instead of saying I'm asking for $100,000 today, I just say something like, in order to, accomplish this project we've been working on for years, I need to raise $500,000. Would you like to participate in this fundraising campaign? And that was where I got real weak. Like I didn't know how to finish that sentence, how to make the punch. And so they gave me some good feedback on how to wrap up that ask.
Nice. What was the feedback?
It was something like, are you, are you interested in contributing to this project? Or, let's see, I think I said something simple like, can you help us fulfill this accomplishment, or can you help us reach this goal, or something loose like that. But I don't know if that's, too casual. Maybe I need to be more specific.
No, I don't know. I personally, I think, if you've been talking to this donor, in my opinion, in my experience, you have a good relationship with them. They know the scope of the project, but that relationship is strong. And so you don't want to come at them too aggressive, but you do want to close it out. So I think that's appropriate. I think, will you be an investor in this? Will you help us finish it? Will you help us get to the finish line? Just to make it full circle, and then it's in their lap to make the decision. So it's not kind of just sitting in the middle of the two of you. I think it's good, but I don't know what
I'm going to give a different perspective, and I really like to ask for a specific amount.
Okay.
Even if, I also like sharing the full amount you're trying to raise.
Yeah.
So both of those points, because I like, the fewer things they have to sit there and react to and run numbers in their head. I just like to cut down on all of that. Have them make one specific dollar amount ask and have them react to that. And so that does require you to do your homework a little bit more. And I always recommend asking for more, ask for that amount that gives you butterflies. And, that you may get kind of a surprise reaction. But that's a surprise reaction is not a no.
Is there a good rule of thumb? If it's 4 times their largest gift or 10 times their largest gift?
Again, that comes through research and just trying to find out what they've given to other organizations. And if somebody yesterday was sharing about a donor who just came into a lot of money. So that donor's trying to figure out how to give that away. So that's kind of an unusual situation. And you're not going to see that reflected probably in their philanthropic activity yet because it's a new development in their life. So you really have to take in consider all these factors. And I like to go into the meeting with an amount in my mind, and depending on how the meeting goes and what their answers are to the questions, that may go up. I try not to push it, talk myself down. But try not to say, what is that? Don't say no to yourself before someone else says no to to your ask. So
I think I'm worried about offending then. If I ask too much.
People don't get offended by being asked too much.
What does it mean to
No.
ask for too much? If you ask for too much, it means that you think he's really wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might be
Well,
surprised, but a
yeah.
surprise is not a no.
Yeah,
And they might say, I have to think about it, I have to talk to my spouse,
yeah,
I need to figure some things out, but none of that is a no.
yeah.
So it's out there on the table.
Yeah. I also think since you're doing capital campaign, I think something that was successful for Colorado Westland Trust was we had this pyramid of giving levels. Not that it was sponsorship or anything, but it was where we saw donors and we estimated how many gifts we needed within these giving levels to hit our goal. And that's how many asks we were going to make. Doubled it. But yeah, so no, not double the gifts, but double the asks, right?
Yeah.
You're going to make 15 asks and get 3 gifts, but it's still good. So you can sit there and you can have that visual for them and say, this is where I see you. I see you at this $59,000 to $100,000 level. And they can then say to you, yeah, that's where I fit. Or, oh, actually, that's really high. Thank you. So that also is helpful to have those visuals too. But yeah, I just did a sit down with my ED actually with these donors, and we're launching our major giving program, our major gift program, and we sat down with them and we made the mistake thinking we knew what they were interested in, because we did do some research and we did ask and we were told, yeah, this would be a project they'd be interested in. So right away our ED pitched that project, and the whole body language and like it was like they were just like, and like you could just tell the way that their shoulders kind of went down. They just were not interested, right? But because we have such a good relationship with them, we ended that. You know, my ED and I chatted, we regrouped, and they were willing to sit down with us again. And we were like, okay, how are we going to approach this time? And it was really the steps we went through. Sit down and ask them, what is it that you really love about our organization? Because you're giving, you know, this much to these many years, and listen to them to then, in our minds, identify the project that would fit that best.
So it's interesting that we're in very different sort of situations where, you know, he's been able to cultivate relationships with donors for however long. My organization lost our executive director of 17, 18 years and had some pretty tumultuous few 3 to 4 years. So I'm in this position of rebuilding relationships and rebuilding trust, but it's honestly helpful to think about this and the major giving concept now, because as I'm developing these relationships with donors, reestablishing that trust and stability, I can keep this in my brain as I move towards that in the future. And so even the initial conversations with donors when I'm meeting them, having this in my brain is helpful too.
Yeah.
Do you have in your mind the different options, and then in that meeting, do you offer the options, or is it something that you're just kind of asking the questions, learning more, and then you go back and think about it, and then reach out to them with an ask?
Yeah.
I always think about like spending the right amount of time, right? Like they say 7 touches, but a lot of these people are super busy.
Right.
And I've had meetings where like they expected, like, why did you meet with me if you don't have something to ask me? I was like,
Yeah.
trying to do things, and like talk to you and say thank you.
Yeah, I think step one, right? Step one is who are you bringing with you? So if it's in a situation where you may not know what it is specifically that they're interested in, bring your ED who knows a little bit more about the whole project, right? Or a program officer that maybe touches different pieces of land conservation and not just the conservation easements or whatever it may be. Because then if that is the situation, because it is hard to get with these, you know, and people who travel all the time because they do have money, it's hard to sit down with them. And so when you have them in front of you, it's like, okay, we want to do that. So I guess feel out. My recommendation would be feel out. And if you or your ED or whoever you're with knows to ask, you know, you guys went in saying, okay, we're going to ask for 50,000 and we can put it toward these projects. And if it fits, I would make the ask then that you're in front of them. Or now you took down this information, you can say, I'm going to follow up with a proposal and follow up in a timely manner. That would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like? Is that an email
Yeah.
or another phone call?
I would do a written proposal, PDF signed by you with a note and email it to them. And then if they respond, they'll probably give you a call. That would be my thought. But you can follow up with them in a couple of days. Say, I sent you an email with a proposal. Just wanted to follow up, see if you wanted to meet, and they may just say, oh, we can't do that this year, and then that's when you say, can you do it in 5 years, over 5 years, right? Give them different options, so don't just take the first no. That's what I've learned. But
I like to pitch multi-year gifts. And I think there's rarely a situation where you can't make your, what they're specifically interested in about your work. There's rarely a situation where you can't take that and turn it into, we're doing this for the long haul. We've got a long road ahead of us to do this. Would you give X amount over the next 2 years? Or if you know them really well and they've been giving for a long time, would you give this amount over the next 3 years? Because then you've really made a huge forward progress from one meeting. You have a pledge now for several years to fall back on. So.
any other takeaways you guys got from those exercises? Oh,
Oops.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about, one-on-one conversations, asking for major gifts. But there's the other end of the spectrum, sort of the Bernie Sanders approach, where you ask a bazillion people to give $25. And the community conservation side of me loves that idea, like allowing anybody in the community, no matter what your financial status is, to make a difference. Imagine a 7-year-old kid coming up and putting pocket change into a bucket. She helped conserve his properties. That's exciting. I think there's benefits to that. I just wondered if, when we think about fundraising, do we think about that side of it too? And is that worth doing? There's other benefits to it, but it's probably very time consuming. I just wanted to get some feedback on that.
I just think that is a whole other training because it's a very different approach.
Yeah.
And for appealing to, being able to bring in a huge number, whatever huge that looks like for your organization, it requires you to be on it with branding and be willing to invest resources in, paid ads online, be getting in front of as many eyeballs as possible to be raising those small dollar gifts.
Yeah.
So the Bernie Sanders, the Obama campaigns, the millions they put in to get $10 donors, $5 a month donors, they were just trying to get in front of people on social media, in their email, over text. So it's a big upfront cost to really see a significant boost from that. Yeah.
So if you were going into an ask situation where somebody had said you're giving you $10,000 a year and you were wanting to ask for 100, do you have a way that you frame? Because in my capital campaign situation, it's easy enough to say we'd like you to continue your annual gift and consider this one-time gift or this gift spread over 5 years to the campaign at this level, making sure that we still want the annual gift. But if you're trying to just get them to increase their annual gift, how do you frame that? Can you give us an example, spiel?
Oh, maybe I'll let Beka give the spiel, but I would say I would still want them to give my annual fund, and I would make a budget line for major gifts and have a goal for that. But you still want their annual fund contribution, and it may be at that level. But I think when you're making a major gift, in my opinion, it's for something specific that you want to accomplish. So think of it as a mini.
It's in the
Yeah.
category.
Yeah. But maybe it's
So you're
maybe
not
different.
just asking them to increase their
You could. I think it depends on how long they've been involved with the organization. I think when you're setting up to make a much bigger ask, it helps to reference.
Yeah.
Not only have you been giving, you've been giving us advice. You have been on the board. Your footprint is huge with our organization. So really just speaking to this is bigger than just you writing checks year after year. And we've noticed, and we've been keeping tabs, and we really value all the ways in which you've participated. And the stakes of this campaign. We need to raise, $500,000 by the end of the summer if we're going to get any momentum to then complete this by next June. So you wrap all of that legacy the stakes, the timeliness of their gift now to meet a halfway point, goal, and also mentioning just the larger impact of your work as a whole. And you just kind of paint this whole big, beautiful, beautiful picture before launching into the ask. So that's why I'm asking you to make an extraordinary increased gift to us. And what that's going to do is X, Y, Z. And then just be quiet and let them answer. Because oftentimes we sort of like start qualifying it and like, it's hard to just sit once you've made the ask. Yeah.
Do you feel like for these major gifts, you need to have that like glossy handout, case for support document?
No, I think if it's for a specific project, so like our land trust is working on this buy, protect, sell pilot. And so if we're going to donors and asking for that specific project, we may bring some stuff as backup. If it's just for general operating and we, want to make their gift 5 times, I don't think you need the glossy stuff. But you can always follow up too with materials if you go down tangents while you're talking and you don't have that with you.
If they're brand new to your organization and they don't know much about you, I think it's nice to be able to email them something so you don't actually have to have paid money to print it out. Maybe you paid to have a graphic designer make something look nicer than what you could do. But you can just email that as an attachment, or you can already have it on your website. You just link them to it and say, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Here you can see, our 2024 year of impact or whatever it might be. That's a recent roundup of what you did. I really don't like sending the 15-page annual reports to a new person because they are not going to read it. It's so in the weeds. Try and send a 2-page summary of your annual report, That's much more approachable. Try to walk that fine line leading up to the pitch part of a meeting, and speak to their specific interest and what captures them about the work, but not make the pitch saying, and your gift will go directly to this. It's, we know you love this part of our work. I'm asking you for a gift to support our long-term impact. And so then the language right around the specific gift is very broad. So it's a general operating gift. I try to do that instead of restricting it.
Yeah.
I just feel like the generations of donors coming up behind that's not their main driver for giving, is to have their name on things, as much as it was, maybe 30, 50 years ago. So I wouldn't continue it.
So I think we just you want me to finish it out? Or?
Yeah, yours are so good.
So just a couple key takeaways I think I got from putting this together with Beka, and then our conversations is major donor work is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Remember that, okay? I think that is a super important thing as fundraisers to remember, that it will pay off all those miles and meetings and touch points and long work. It will pay off, but to remember it's a marathon. So don't try to get it in a short period of time. Focus on people, not just dollars. That relationship, people give to people. Building that and strengthening that relationship is what's super important. And then listen, be consistent, be curious, and be courageous. So that courageous piece is asking, right, for a specific dollar amount that maybe is a little higher than both of you guys are not comfortable with at the time. So those are my key takeaways. I think it's also a great time to learn new skills and level up fundraising strategies. So, get yourself a coach, ask an experienced peer, use each other, share what we know and what's working. I think I'll share with the new ED our capital campaign material, and maybe you can find some language in there. I don't know her name, but yeah. Susanna. But yeah, use each other. I think that's super important. We don't have a lot of time, so if we can use each other and build off what other people are doing, that's then what works for us. Think of those organizations that you admire and ask if you have a conversation. Ask if you can have a conversation to learn how they approach donors, what's working, what's not. action steps. Think about what are you going to practice? Think of a specific donor and an aspect to your program. Write it down, share it. Questions. Oh, that might be me asking questions. Sorry. Any questions?
Yeah, and just wanted to say it's not the end of the conversation. If you ever want to get in touch with me, I wanted to say, we've brought it up, it sprinkled it into this presentation. There's like really great questions that you can ask your donors during your meetings. I have a complimentary, handout I'd love to share with you. Just get in touch with me over email. I can send that to you. And yeah, just reach out to either one of us. Stay in touch with each other. Our community is going to help each other during this era. So, thank you.
Thank you.